And then I'm going to welcome you all here and thank you for coming back at 11 o'clock. This is going to be potentially a very interesting session. Again, just to remind ourselves that we're on Ngunnawal, Ngambri and various other Indigenous nations, countries around the continent. And that underneath Indigenous lands are the ecosystems that nurture, protect, to sustain us. So today we're talking about relating to our MPs, and I've tweaked the title a little bit from replacing our MPs because we've got a broader selection of sort of panelists here. So not only as advertised do we have Rob Salter from Active Democracy Australia, whose focus very much is relating to our MPs, and Glenn Cummings, who is from is it ProAct or Pro-ACT?
We tend to go ProAct.
ProAct.
Yeah.
Who are talking about replacing our senators in the ACT with an independent senator, and there's a process there. Craig Blakely, who has helped set up and run Vote Easy, which is designed to be a mechanism where candidates and voters can get together on one platform and share information about each other, mainly candidates sharing information about themselves, sort of a one-shop stop for voters. Then we've also got Anna Bateman, who's from the local party Tasmania, and they're also active there now in this space around, getting independence into, you'll let me know whether it's the Senate or not. And then finally Nadine Al-Nemra, who is from the Canberra University Centre for Deliberative Democracy. And they've done the Connecting to Parliament exercise recently with Andrew Lee in Fenner and Alicia Payne in Canberra. And again, that's some interesting stuff around making those linkages. In this case, it's also from a research perspective, but the interesting things that they have learned. So the process here is that I'll give each of you about 2 minutes to do a quick sort of, what are the key lessons that you've got that you want us to take away? And then we'll open it to conversation, and please use the chat. And if you want to ask a question, please stick your hand up so I can notice you in the top left-hand corner of my screen. So I guess let's ask Rob Salter to go first.
All right, good, thank you. And now will you give me a cue if I go over time?
Okay.
Okay, so Active Democracy Australia has more or less just started. We had one website, now we've got another website, and that's at activedemocracy.org.au. You're welcome to have a look at it. And our aim is to encourage groups to get what we're calling sort of generically electorate action groups to get going in every electorate, every lower house federal electorate. And this really, for me, starts from the belief that if people get organised into groups, they can be much more effective. So instead of being a group of disparate and perhaps atomised individuals, they're pulling in one direction, they're helping one another, they're learning from one another, they're supporting one another, etc. Now, we're inspired by the experience of Indi, but we do differ from the Voices groups in that we are suggesting that groups consider a range of actions rather than just trying to toss out the existing MP and replace them with an independent, although we do think that that's a legitimate objective and it may be one that you choose. But we also encourage people to try and get on better with to communicate better with their MP. We're interested in groups helping to inform the electorate about policy options and the evidence base for this, about the policies of the candidates and the background of the candidates, and about the needs of the electorate so that they can make more informed choices. And there's a sort of broader list on the website of things that we're suggesting. But so we want to work with the MPs, but we also want to help through these groups the electorate to be more informed so that they can make better choices come election time, and also become more active in communicating with their MP.
That's your time, Rob.
Okay, good.
Okay. Next on my list is Glenn.
Great, thanks, Peter. So I'm one of the founding members of ProAct. We're a group here in the ACT that was set up on the Voices for model. So, not dissimilar to what Rob's been talking about, but very much at the pointy end of the Voices for groups, which is actively seeking an independent member to stand in the next election. We crunched the numbers, and the lower house isn't an option here in the ACT. They're pretty well sewn up. But the ACT only has 2 senators, but one of them only just squeaks into a quota. So if you look at the numbers, there's real space for an independent who can build a coalition that would include climate change and integrity and some of these other things. There is space for an independent senator to take that second quota. And I guess the original Voices for Indi model was set up to engage with their local politician, Sophie Mirabella, and when they presented her with the evidence of what was happening, she kind of laughed them out. So they said, right, we're going to do something about this and take it on. We haven't chosen to engage with the senators here because one of them has been very public in their views about the territory shouldn't have their own rights to vote, very anti-climate, very anti all the things that we've been hearing from the 300 or so people we've had discussions with on those kitchen table model. So we started with a set of principles, and then we've worked towards a set of issues that are very important to people. And we're sort of at the stage now where we're starting to look for candidates. We have 2 or 3 people who have expressed interest, and so we're about to start a process where we'll decide whether community, we're putting together a little panel of people who have engaged with us and some of the committee to look at who we might endorse as an independent to run for the Senate in the ACT at the election. If it's December, it might be early, but probably March or May next year, I guess people are talking. So very much that, taking a principles approach, surfacing issues, surfacing an independent candidate that community has agreed upon and can get behind, with a view to building a broad enough church that you can take the second quota, basically, is where we're at.
Excellent, thank you. Craig.
Yeah. Hi everyone, just Craig from Vote Easy here. Just to clarify what Peter was saying before, what Vote Easy is basically about, it's a website that we put together to help candidates and voters connect, to find each other. What we find is that the problem with is that voters are making the problem for democracy wide of things at the start when they vote. They don't have the information that they need. It's very difficult. So what we've tried to do is simplify it to give everybody access to each other. We don't influence anything. We don't have an opinion on anything. We're just a conduit that helps candidates and voters find each other. So what we find, if you can give voters the information, then they'll make better decisions. And you've got to make it easy, because not a lot of voters follow politics on a day-to-day basis. They want to make an informed decision, but they don't, it's just not interested. I'm not interested in fixing cars, so I know nothing about cars. And politics is the same sort of thing. They don't follow it day to day, but then they're told to make a decision at voting time. It's too hard. They've got to go, they're not interested in finding it. They get a bunch of names on a list. Whoever's got the biggest budget or has made the biggest noise at the time, they tend to either default to that or listen to that. So what we've realized is, even if you have a look at this group here, everybody has different ways of doing something, but it's all up here, after the voters have made a decision. So all we're trying to do is make the decision down here and allow you all to get involved and support your communities, your candidates, whatever it might be, and to get to people to one point. So really what Vote Easy is about is an affordable way for candidates to advertise their campaign, their full campaign. And it doesn't matter what part of politics you come from, it's about getting voters to those people so that they can make an informed decision. Once we get the politicians that represent their communities, then we, then we can all tackle the democracies and the subjects and the issues and the titles. But unless we get politicians representing the people, it's going to be continuously fighting and going around this circle. So what we're trying to do is do something different. We involve everybody and we make it affordable, because if it's affordable, they don't need the large political donations to fund advertising campaigns, etc. Therefore, you take the influence out of it. So we do a lot of the work down here to help make your life easier up there.
Thank you, Craig. All right, Anna.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, Anna Bateman. I'll put the link to the local party in the chat box. Because I've only got 2 minutes. But it was formed by Leanne Mitchell and myself, November 2020. We registered in Tassie in March, and we just sent off our registrations for federal registration after the rule changes, which you probably all know about. So we are basically a network for progressive independence. We have a progressive constitution, but every member once elected would have a conscience vote. We believe in action plans as opposed to policies, and we have embedded citizen juries in our constitution. So we feel very strongly that the bond between the elected representative and the people has been lost in lots of cases, and we want the bond to be between the candidate and their community. In terms of Tasmania, yes, Peter, in answer to your question, we are running a Senate candidate, Leanne Mitchell. Leanne has been a climate activist for 3 decades. She worked for the Australia Institute. She pioneered climate divestment. She's a fantastic woman, and she's running in the Senate. The situation in Tasmania this time around, Labor will get 2, the Libs will get 2, Peter Whish-Wilson will be fine and hang on to his seat. There's a fairly consistent vote for the Greens, around between 9% and 11%. So it's the 6th seat that's up for grabs, and Senator Eric Abetz has been pushed to number 3. He says it's been discriminated against because of his age and his gender. Poor Eric. So we think there's a real chance for, although it's hard, but in Tassie, Jackie Lambie was elected on 31,000 votes. So Tassie there's a real chance. It's a narrow path to victory, but there is a possibility. I'm standing for the federal seat of Franklin against Labor member Julie Collins, who's very much to the right of the parties down here. The Liberal and Labor Party down here are pretty much in lockstep on almost all issues. Okay, sorry.
That's all right. Thank you, Anna. All right, Nadine.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Peter. I'm really happy that this follows from Anna, because we do have some elements of citizens' juries. Connecting to Parliament hosts deliberative town halls with members of Parliament. And as Peter said earlier, we've done 2, actually 3 in total, 2 with Andrew Leigh when there was a conscious vote about the ban on mitochondrial donation in September 2020, and then another one on the engagement and inclusion of young people in formal politics with Alicia Payne, member for Canberra, this August, late August 2021. When we started the project, we were more focused on the vertical connection, so that is between the constituency or the electorate and their member of parliament. But what we found in the deliberative town halls was really interesting, that people had an appetite for deliberation, not only to connect with the MPs, but also to connect with their fellow electorates. And this was something that was quite insightful, that politics is not only just seeing your voice translated in parliament and policies and actions, but also the very idea that you know what the kind of ideas that people have, the reasons and the considerations within your own electorate. And that's a dynamic about the complexity of deliberation, that people take the questions, they think about their experiences, what the members of parliament as well exhibited, which was really interesting, is that this needs to be a space for authentic conversations where they need to have their personal takes and positions, and something that is not allowed by party discipline and the two-party system as we see it now. We have focused on online spaces lately because of the lockdowns and all these situations. And actually something that I should have mentioned earlier is that this is the counterpart or the sister project for the American Connecting to Congress, led by the Ohio State University. we did adapt so many things. One of the main changes that we have made compared to the American experience is that we interview people. On average, we conduct somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes in-depth interviews about, thank you, Peter. Can I just have one last remark? Now we're in the phase of looking and expanding to look at more seats to understand the dynamics beyond the Canberra bubble, because it's quite skewed in so many aspects, and would love to work with independents such as Anna's Party and others. So yeah, would be great to hear from you. Thanks. Sorry, Peter.
That's all right. That's all right. So look, thank you very much for those brief and concise presentations. I'm now happy to open up the conversation or the forum for questions or comments from the floor. And while you're all thinking, the question I would like to open with, well, there's a comment and a question. The comment is, I mean, it's about what Rob said in terms of working with the MP. In CAPAD, we've been playing with this language a bit because working with the MP implies a power dynamic of some sort of equality, but it will favour the MP because they sit in a position of more power than their constituents usually. And so we've been talking for a while now about the fact that the MPs work for us. And so the language I like to think about here is and it builds off what Millie was saying earlier about the importance of the story. Partially the story we tell ourselves is just as important as the story we tell other people. So it's the idea of that, how do we help the MPs work for us for the common good? So that's sort of my comment into the conversation. My question around Craig, or it's a sort of a series of questions, is are you going to be playing in the next federal election whenever that happens?
Yep.
And you're about connecting candidates and constituents.
Yep.
But there's still a power dynamic there where the platform is mainly for candidates to tell constituents about themselves.
Oh, okay, right. So yeah, what it is.
Hang on.
Sorry.
But I'm wondering about a power reversal. So how does the platform help constituents, you know, structurally help constituents work on choosing between the candidates?
Right. Okay. So what the idea here is at the point that can only be an official candidate to be on it to vote easier, and it's only during elections. So it's first question in relation to the federal election, that we cover every election. So whether it be a state election, by-election, local election. So we're in the middle of doing the New South Wales council elections at the moment, putting all the information up, all the candidates in order, and all in the one space. It's really a promotion. It's an advertising platform for candidates. So it's not a position for for voters to engage with candidates. It's easy to find them, find their campaign. From there, they can go out. We're trying to create a safe space for candidates and to be able to promote themselves without noise. So when you go to, say, a Facebook or anywhere else, it's questions and it gets taken away from their message. It's just a safe place to put their whole campaign for the duration of the official campaign period. And then if a voter goes, so let's look at Anna's sort of group, they click onto that candidate outside, then go to the Facebook, then go to their websites, they can go wherever they want to go, and that's where they engage. They don't engage on Vote Easy. So Vote Easy is all about the voter. But in order to give the voters what they want, we have to give the candidates what they want. And candidates need an affordable, safe place to advertise themselves or promote themselves, and promote themselves in whatever way they want. So at the moment, they can help. Every candidate does things differently, similar to each of these people here with their democracy issues. It's all slightly different, all similar, but slightly different. Well, the candidates are no different. Some of them will have Facebook, some of them will have websites, some of them will have long, complex things, some have very precise. Vote Easy gives them that flexibility to do it. And that's why it's important for the voter. If we all work together point them into one direction where they go to their own electorate. So if you go, for argument's sake, once I do get the New South Wales elections up, you'll go there, you'll go to your electorate. In that electorate will be either the wards, you go to your ward and there is your candidates. They're the only ones you're interested in, you go to them. Then you can click onto them. If they permit, so we don't put any information on. So what we do is we encourage the community to get people involved. We encourage parties or candidates to register, because that's how democracy works. They've got to get involved, the voters have got to get involved, we've all got to get involved. And then if they choose not to participate, well, then we don't have any information there on them. But
Okay.
if we can get them there, then the voters can say, well, this guy wants, or lady wants me to know more about them. If they choose not to join or use Vote Easy, then the voters can say why. If it's affordable, it's easy, why wouldn't you be there?
Okay, thank you, Craig. Sue.
Thanks, Peter. I've actually got 3 questions for 3 people. Can I ask 3 or do I have to choose one?
I'll go for 3.
Thank you. Okay, my first one is to Craig. And having been involved with CAPAD's website on our candidates, to me, it's a really important initiative. And I was struck a few years back when a good friend of mine who's migrated here from Korea and had just become a citizen was asking me, how did he actually find out about the candidates? And it's a very real issue for voters. So I guess what my questions to you are about the usage of Take Easy, how many candidates are buying into it, how many members of the community are using it, how do you advertise it, how do you plan to scale up? So, great concept. How do we get expanded take?
Yep.
Shall I just go with all 3, Peter, or stop there?
Well,
if it's me, that's okay.
If they're all 3 for Craig, give them to Craig. If it's 3 different people, let's give Craig a brief chance to answer.
3 different people, yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, so as far as Vote Easy works, in order to make it different, Vote Easy has to be different, otherwise we've got the same stuff. So what we do in relation to scaling up, it's the take up of the people. And again, this is what we're talking about. Vote Easy is in your hands. So if you support it and share it, and it becomes candidates will go there. Candidates will go anywhere the voters are. So the more we support it by using our logo and say, I support Vote Easy, share it amongst your friends, we can do it without cost, a great deal of cost, because obviously if I just become a normal party or business or anything like that, I need a lot of money to advertise us if we don't do it this way. If I do that, then again, we blow out the costs for candidates and parties, and guess what? We're back to raising money and all that sort of stuff. So Vote Easy is a totally different approach, and it's about joining like-minded people like us. We know a lot of people collectively. Now, if we can collectively work together and without necessarily the politics and move them into that one space, all of a sudden, just through word of mouth and people power, you've increased from me 1 to now maybe 15, 20, and then so forth and so on. So it's just about word of mouth and people power. The other thing in regards to how we find out about the candidates is because it's only official candidates that can use Vote Easy, the candidates go online once the commissions they're official candidates, so they're uploaded and they're in ballot order, because it's important for us, for the voter, to see the candidates in the order in which they're going to turn up on ballot day. So that it's all about taking those undecided voters who don't follow it every day and making it as easy as possible. So if we do that, and then that's how we get the candidates, that's how we upsize. And as far as advertising, we started probably at the end of 2019, but probably officially 2020. And we have tried all different types of advertising, from a lot of money in mainstream, in Target. I think Tasmania was where we were at. And then we've gone around the country, so forth. Now, it's interesting because of the topic. So we're not selling a pair of shoes, it's politics, and it rotates around the country all the time. So like I was saying before, majority of voters I class as undecided voters. Okay, so they don't follow politics every day. So therefore it goes out of their head. So that's where we come around, and through recognition and understanding that, I've got to vote, I've got to Vote Easy, it's all there. But the main thing is understanding it comes down to us working together.
Thank you. Sue, question?
The next question is to Rob Salter, and in a way it's a similar question. Being involved in the Bean Active Democracy group, I'm wondering if any others have formed yet, if there are any electorates that are showing signs of getting underway, just to see if this idea can build up a critical mass and start to snowball.
Pardon?
Okay.
Yeah.
No, you are the only group at the moment, Bean. So you're our star performers at the moment. And what in terms of timelines, we got the website up. There was sort of indirect promotion through the Big Deal documentary, but it was actually quite hard to get to us from the website that was flashed up on the screen briefly. So we've got some interest, but not enough at this stage to form groups. But what we want to do in the next week or so, and we've sort of flagged this, is to have a meeting where we start to develop a promotional plan to make it more well known. Because obviously, unless we can get groups started, then we've got no experience to draw on and to talk to other people about. So that's something that's exercising my mind quite a bit recently. But I'm very confident that if we just promote it, that we'll get some interest. And with the people who have come forward, we're suggesting to them that they also do work in trying to enroll their friends and other people they know in it, and start in a small way, perhaps with a kitchen table conversation, and just see what evolves from that, and give them whatever support we can. I mean, one of the things that we've thought of, for example, is holding Zooms for people, hosting Zooms for people, for a group of people, so that we can talk through with them how they can get things going in their electorate.
Can I jump in quickly, Peter? Sorry,
Yeah.
just to ask Rob a follow-up. So, I mean, I know the Voices for movement is perceived as trying to get voters up, but it's actually quite a big spectrum. There's about 35 of them, I think, and I'm sure you're aware of those. And not all of them will have candidates up. Are any of those existing groups coming under your banner as well? Is that part of an idea? Because they are actually at that end of the spectrum where they are just engaging and trying to get people, I think, doing similar things.
Yes. Well, one of the things that we need to do is to make contact with them individually. But we did make a decision to mention the Voices groups on we've got 150 electorate pages as part of our new website, with information about the candidate, about any existing groups, all of which are Voices groups at the moment, apart from Bean. And so we didn't want to draw some sort of artificial division between us and them. But I've personally had contact with people from about 6 or 8 of them. I think we should systematically, at some stage very soon, make formal contact with them, tell them about our website, invite them to have a dialogue, because I think it's really important. I think the situation is going to be very fluid over the next few years as to what people do, whether they put up candidates, whether they take an approach which is more like what we're advocating. So I think from that point of view, it's good to have good relationships with other groups, even if they're doing something that looks a bit different.
Okay, thanks. Sue, back to you.
Oh, thank you so much. My third question goes to Glenn, and it's just about the dynamics of an election and the problem of independents effectively competing against each other. And you know, I'm aware, Glenn, in Canberra we have now one person contesting as an independent for the seat in the ACT, who has built up a strong following, and having been involved in some of the Voices for Zoom discussions, I was very struck by a comment that was made in relation to Warringah, that you need a movement first, then you find a candidate. And then in Warringah, it was get Tony out, and that mob then swung behind Sally Stengel when she was identified.
Yeah.
So I'm just reflecting on the possibility in the ACT of independents cancelling each other out, and are you engaging with other independent candidates or possible independent candidates, and are you trying to just get a critical mass that might stand a good chance of winning that Senate seat, or wanting to use your methodology to pursue this goal?
Well, I mean, we believe strongly in that you need a movement to get an independent up. So, I mean, we've been talking with Kim. You're talking about Kim for Canberra, Kim Rubenstein. We've been talking with Kim since early June, since well before she declared and formed the party and suggested that, this was the process, and this is what we believe the principles and the process were in terms of getting, listening to people and finding out what issues are important to people and getting a movement up first. Now, she decided that that she wanted to run her own campaign, and that's fine. We hosted a town hall with her, talking to the people who've signed up to our mailing list a couple of weeks ago, and the full video is on our website. So, we certainly are not against the idea that if our group decides actually what Kim stands for is what has come through our process, then we're not against the idea of endorsing her. But we very much believe that we're carrying on with that process, as I said, and talking to at least 2 or 3 others that I know of at the moment about whether they're who have expressed interest in running, and whether they align better with the values and the issues that the group that we've been talking to, the movement that we've built. If there's better alignment there, then we may endorse a different candidate. Now, in terms of splitting the vote, certainly that was the case in the Mallee in Victoria last time out. I think that 14 independents there. I don't think it's a problem with a couple, with 2 or 3. I think, in many ways, if you can grow the pie for independents and then get the preferencing right, and we wouldn't specify who preferences who, but if you can grow the pie and keep the vote within that independent group, then that's a positive thing. I think if you have too many, you start to leak too many votes through preferences. But I don't think there's an issue with 2 or 3 independents running, if they're running on sort of slightly different platforms, and my sense is that may be the way it's heading at the moment.
Thank you. Anna.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to quickly add a couple of things. So in our constitution, all of our candidates have to come through community. So they have to already be active in their community. We believe very much that we are a movement, as much as we are, getting good progressives in, but we're actually a movement. And once elected, all our candidates have to use their electoral allowance to hold citizen juries. In terms of, that bond, and I'd really like to hear a little bit more from Nadine in terms of, and I know that there's a citizen jury session, so, but her reflections on how she's seen that in operation in terms of people feeling that connection and making that work.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Anna. So the deliberative town halls are not specific, they're not the same design as a citizen jury where you have expert witnesses on an issue and there's a remit where everyone is, geared to actually address at the end of the sessions. Instead, it's a little bit more flexible, but in the first 2 town halls that we did where no experts were present in the room, the feedback that we got and the insights we got from the interviews is that there has to be an expert. There are technical things. And what we were really fascinated by is that the constituency's understanding of experts here was quite broad. So on the issue of mitochondrial donation, they wanted to hear not just from the scientific experts who are involved in the donation process, but also ethicists, lawyers. They kind of counted Andrew Leigh because he was capable of responding to so many technical questions as the expert, but it was not quite satisfactory. So this is where we adopted that one element from citizen juries into the next iteration with Alicia Payne by bringing an expert in the room about the issue of youth inclusion to respond to all of these complex questions. So in particular I just wanted to explain the context where the deliberative town halls were a little bit different to citizen juries. In terms of the connection, there were actually there were a very interesting set of factors that allowed this connection. The most prime of them is that the MP has to be authentic, it has to be genuine, has to abandon party lines when engaging in these conversations. And this is quite challenging. So what we've seen is that this is quite possible with Andrew Leigh, because on the one hand, this was a conscious vote. On the other, he was able to, it's part of his election persona, let's call it so. He presents himself as an academic who's able to separate himself from his party, but also make his position quite clear to his constituents. Alicia has a different kind of electoral or election profile, which didn't allow her completely to engage in this authentic conversation. I hope this recording is not going to be publicly available because...
It is.
Oh, okay. Can we redact this bit?
I don't know. I'm having great difficulty.
Okay, well, the idea is that Alicia's quite committed to the vision of the party, and some people quite appreciated this, but they wanted her to go beyond that and engage very genuinely in what she thinks. And I think that the aspect of the personal, it came up in our interviews time and time again that people wanted to know who the candidate is, who the MP is as a person. What are the things they're anxious about? What are the things that they think in relation to the issue, as well as Australian democracy writ large? And so this was an essential element of establishing connection to be authentic and genuine. The other factors revolve around the capacity to admit limitations, like a politician cannot be across all issues. Whenever they haven't formed an opinion on something, they should admit that. One of the other things is to recognize as well how the input from citizens affects the way they think about the issue and how they're going to evaluate it and how they're going to take it back to whether to Parliament or the party. So all of these factors coming together, and we see that there's a very strong connection between being genuine and authentic in the first place to actually allow for the success of these other factors to come together. This is what we have seen from the 3 town halls. It's still very early stages in the project. And again, the Canberra bubble, I keep referring to it as the bubble because most people are quite well read, well educated. They're quite engaged as well. And they're motivated to, they see it as a civic commitment to participate in conversations like these and projects like these. Of course, there are other limitations. We haven't seen a lot of people getting involved, for instance, with the issue of youth engagement, be it because of how sensitive it is, the demographic makeup that a lot of people are employed in the public service and maybe they're not very free to speak their minds on the issues. It's possibly because the town hall was also hosted just as the lockdown was announced, so maybe a lot of people were quite anxious and frustrated. So all of these things affected the kind of people we talked to and the insights that we concluded. But this is generally the picture that we have now. Yeah, it would be great to hear from you if this is something that you've seen as well, if there are things that you expected or things that stand out to you as different.
Was that question to me? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what, and in fact, I worked for Jackie Lambie for 18 months in Canberra, and we're not values aligned on a whole lot of things. But what I got constantly from people was, oh, we really like Jackie because she just seems really authentic. She just tells the truth. And, largely she does. She's very honest about her opinions, and that's very powerful. So I think the authenticity thing is really important. And the, relating, look, I spent 35 years in the media. I've made a lot of television programs and documentaries, and I've been a journalist, so I've been on the other side of it. And, always the media go, well, how do you know that? Well, what? And, politicians are so nervous about saying, well, actually, I haven't looked into it deeply enough, or actually need to talk to experts in the field, or I need to go back to my community. And they see that as a mistake, that's a mistake to say that as a journalist that shows them to be, not across their brief or their whatever it is. My personal view, and I have no data to back this up, Nadine, but is that people go, oh, that's all right. Yeah, that's kind of, at least they're honest, at least they're going to go and check it out. So I think that authenticity and that honesty is incredibly important, and how they relate to the issue personally. You know, I got in, yes, anyway, I mean, I don't want to take up too much of anybody else's time, but yeah, I think that's really key. And I personally, you know, I've worked with and around for a couple of politicians, Tony Windsor and Jackie Lambie, and they both really liked talking to their constituents. They liked hearing from their community. Tony was, you know, I worked for him on a campaign, but all his people would tell me that he was out of Canberra as soon as he could, as soon as the sit was over, and he was in his constituency office Friday morning, 8 o'clock. And that was what he regarded as being, you know, equally as important as being in the House and being there for the vote. So, but I have to say, I didn't see a lot of that kind of dedication from others when I was up there. That's not to say there's not good people there, there totally are, but I do think there's a disconnect. I think people get disconnected. And one thing we're looking at in our constitution, which we believe is living, breathing document that all our members across Australia, you know, will have a part in, is we're looking at limiting terms in our constitution. So you've had 2 terms in the Senate or the House, time for you to move over and look to somebody else coming through. And I think Kath McGowan showed that with Helen Haynes. We meet a lot of young people who go, what's the point? I could be running the Darebin branch of the Labor Party or the Greens or the Liberal Party for 20 years and never get a chance to put my hand up. So we're also about creating that infrastructure so young people can get engaged and think about running.
Yeah. Okay, just a reminder, if you want to ask a question, to stick your hand up. Craig just had his hand up.
Thanks, Pete. Nadine, I was just listening there in regards to honesty from politicians. I think, again, if we go back to the point where voters know the person they're voting for, they will elect a more representative politician. So then when they come to town meetings like yours, they will be more open because the voters have made a collective decision based on informed information. So I think you'll find that that'll help there as well. And then with Anna's situation there, again, I'm not too sure about limited terms, etc. and so forth, because what we try to teach the voters is that if you've got a good politician, let's assume they're existing, is that you keep them. Don't throw them out, don't get rid of them. And that involves Senate as well. If you've got a good active politician, let them go forever and a day because they're active within the community. They're doing things like the town halls and stuff like that. So we wouldn't be encouraging from a voter's point of view, that sort of thing. But what we do is say that if they're going to these meetings, they're not engaged, they're flipping and flopping, then you need to look for a new politician, then go back to you when you're voting, and find a new one that will work for your community. And through voters then holding them accountable at that particular point in time, that's where you'll find all these improvements later on, because the voters are more engaged. They have got that information, they've made a decision, and they have expectations of this person. Because Vote Easy is not just about making it easy for them to connect, it's about how to make your politician, understanding they do represent you, and making them more accountable.
Okay.
So can I just quickly respond on the 2 terms thing, which I think one of the reasons I agree that there are really good politicians that, you know, and I'm thinking of people like Tony Windsor and Peter Andren and those great independents. But I also think that there's a lot of politicians that, you know, it's quite, you know, that I think personally people get disconnected.
Oh, for sure.
Constituents, because they're earning a lot of money, got a lot of privileges, got a lot of travel allowances, and I think that it's just a human thing that you do get disconnected. So
and that's why we allow, because we do upper and lower houses as well. So voters can go to the Senate and go and look at those individuals as well. So if you have a senator that's representing your community and groups like you are saying this senator's no good, then they can go and find those other senators. So just because they're on ticket number 1, the way it works, and go, no, I want to vote that particular person because Anna tells me he's really good, and Dean says that these people work well. So we want the voters to determine who is inactive. And as you teach them, because one thing about elections is the candidates change all the time, but one thing it doesn't change is the voters. The voters go to the same local elections, the same state elections, the same federal elections. And once you educate them how to hold these people responsible, they will work out in an inactive politician reasonably quickly. And with the support crew that we've got here, I'm sure we'll be very vocal about who isn't very good. Now, the only politician that represents these people are the one they elect. So they'll be pretty up to speed as to who's not representing them very well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Nadine. And then
I just wanted to follow up on a few points, but I'll pick up on the very last thing. Just for clarification, connecting to Parliament is not about evaluating how well MPs are doing, in as much how is it that the connection after elections can be established? What are the ways of doing that? And it's not just limited to the town halls. It's one method of understanding this, like from citizens' perspective, how can Australian democracy be improved? What are the ways in which we can stay engaged and directly participate, have our voice? You know, you have one voice in your secret ballot, and it shouldn't end there. Like, what are the ways of actually making this sustainable? So that's the point of clarification I wanted to make. The other point was on the 2 terms and rotation of power, but this could be a big conversation for another time.
And your point is, if briefly?
Very briefly, as a young person, and I truly admire what Anna said very honestly about the very idea that you get very well paid as an MP, which is not for me, as someone who's experiencing quite, as a young person, you have a lot of financial precarity. I do have a different experience because I'm not a citizen, but at the same time, if I were to see myself as a citizen living through these circumstances, I wouldn't encourage people to stay forever and a day.
Okay, Thor.
Just a quick question for Craig. Nice to see you in person. I've used Vote Easy before. Now, just to clarify, so it will be after close of nominations before you will be accepting any of the candidates?
Yeah, at the moment, see, as time goes on and we hear in feedback, we can adjust. Again, everything costs money. So as we get more support, and then we can start to develop the product a little bit better. But the reason why we do it this way, and again, it's about doing something different. What we know is what doesn't work. So in order to try and make something different, the voters only need to hear from official candidates. They don't need, the reason why campaigning happens earlier is because somebody's gone and raised a lot of money and gone and kicked it off earlier. Now, what we've discovered is that there's a lot of candidates that go out there and say they're going to run, then elections kick in, guess what? They're not there, but they've been spruiking their story to voters, confusing the hell out of them. So we've gone, right, let's look at the problem is. The problem is voters need just what they need to do, need the information on the candidates to make that choice. That's the important decision, not the noise that goes on around it. So at the moment, yes, that's exactly how we do it, because it's about, and going back to Peter's case, Vote Easy is about the voter. But to give the voters what they need, we need to give the candidates and a place. We need to give them what they need to give the voters what they need.
Okay. Does somebody who hasn't yet asked a question or made a comment like to ask a question or make a comment?
Yes.
Petra, go ahead.
Hi, Glenn. I just wanted to ask you, so I noticed that when I was using Vote Easy, I was
Glenn or Craig?
Oh, sorry. Am I getting, yeah, Craig. Sorry.
Oh, hello.
That's all right.
Picking up my names. So Craig, yeah, I was using Vote Easy last time at our elections, our local elections, and it was fantastic because I could see all the candidates. I read about what they said about themselves. And I chose from that which people I would then want to go and speak to,
Yes. Yeah.
track them down at the supermarket and then have a conversation with them. And what I found was that was actually a really important second step. So, Vote Easy was a fantastic place to get the information about who was actually in the running and get a sense of who I might relate to. But then when I spoke to them, I found a couple of them to be quite different and have different values to what they had put up on the Vote Easy platform. So I did find that that was an essential second step because, well, clearly you're offering free advertising. They're going to put anything up there.
Oh, no, it's not. It's not free.
No?
No, it's not free.
Okay.
No,
Righto.
because like we're saying, we do it this way because it's advertising for them. It's their choice that it's to advertise their platform, and it's just an affordable way for them to do it. Now,
Okay.
as I said, it's voluntary for them to get involved, but
Yeah.
we've given them everything they need to
Yeah.
reach the electorate, and where you've utilised that service perfectly. Now, that's why it's important for voters, for us not to have an opinion. So if they put information up that's glossy and a sales pitch, by you following it up and being engaged as a voter, and let's assume you didn't meet them and you voted that way and then found out this person is not the person they sold. Well, guess what you're not going to do? You're not going to vote them next time. But going back to what Nadine was saying, we want you engaged on a day-to-day basis. Now, if the electorate found out that this person is a dud, well, we want you kicking up now. We want you to want them out the door. There'll be a by-election and you'll get a new person, because that person is not going to stick around if the community are going, you're a fraud. So they'll go out the door, you'll get your by-election, and we're off and racing again. What that does is send a very clear message back to the candidates that the voters are back in charge.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Nadine.
So I think one of the most important things is that there has to be a diversity of experiences, like the disconnect. I mean, tracking down to the supermarket is something that's really interesting. I really like how you put it, because who are these people? What kind of lives do they lead besides actually going to Parliament and, you know, taking this responsibility of representing their electorates? And this is where, again, I try to relate this to the point of rotation of power, because people, I mean, Sue mentioned a very great example about a new citizen who is asking, how do I find out about these people? And if there are no social spaces that are actually about establishing these connections, get to know the candidate as well as the electorate, it becomes really hard to establish that connection. And then I'm not sure exactly how that would translate in terms of their capacity to advertise, but the way I see deliberative town halls is not a means for campaigning. It's not for point scoring, which is something that's quite unique to the experience, because it is created as a space where the constituents challenge their MPs to think as a peer, as a member of this community, rather than as someone who's trying to score points and win their vote. And one of the reasons why, I mean, it would be interesting to see how the town halls play out prior to the elections, and see if their behavior changes, like if there's a change between times when there's no election, it's not very pressing to their survival, and when this actually, you know, their votes are on the line. But I'm not sure exactly how willing the politicians would be to participate in this and abandon the more conventional approaches to campaigning. I hope this was responding to the points you raised, Petra, but if there's something that I left out, I'm happy to follow up.
I did have a question about the town hall, the deliberative town hall process. So you mentioned with Andrew Lee that that question about the mitochondrial donation being quite a technical issue. Just for clarity, did you say that the participants in the process were looking to Andrew as the technical person? Is that right? And did Andrew see himself in that role as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So before coming to the town halls, there were videos prepared by expert bodies. The names escape my mind, but I can send you the details of these. One of them was responsible for mitochondrial donation research in Australia. And then there was another case study from the UK, because the UK has allowed mitochondrial donation. So these were the technical material information for background that people read before coming to the town halls. When it came to questions during the town hall itself, Andrew Lee responded based on his understanding of these, and he would always highlight, this is what he understands, this is how he sees the issue. If there's anything that has never come across before, he would admit that he doesn't know about it. People mostly directed like the legal questions about the drafting the policy, about the policy implications, like who's going to access this, who's going to fund it, the process, who's going to be determining the ethics and the morality of mitochondrial donation, because apparently the ban has a context of a religious verdict, and this is why it's banned so far. In terms of other technical questions that were raised, there are people who are actually quite well across the issue, and they did respond based on their readings. And again, they would clarify, I'm not an expert, but this is what I read and this is what I understand. And this is where we see, we're not testing for technical accuracy at that point. And this is why later we introduced the element from citizen juries, which is to have an expert witness. And so people would always admit, I'm not an expert, this is my experience, whether as a donor, whether as someone who's interested in the issue and read some books about it, and then they would guide people to read these resources as well. And then here is where we see as well elements of connecting horizontally with each other as a constituency.
Yeah.
Great.
We've adjusted the design now, so experts are going to be involved. At least one expert is going to be involved.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we've got pretty much almost to midday. So I'm just going to make some observations and then quickly open up for a last round of comment, brief comment, and then we shall go to lunch. But the interesting thing that's coming through from this session, but also the earlier session today, is this idea of connection. And some of you may or may not be aware that Celine Ercan from the Centre for Deliberative Democracy, as well as Carolyn Hendricks and another person whose name I've forgotten, have written a book called Mending Democracy, which is all about, pardon?
Celine Ercan.
Yeah. And so the thing is that, yeah, there's this thing about the need to rebuild connections, and some of the stuff that's come out today particularly is around the connections between MPs and constituents and constituents as two domains for the rebuilding of connection. The other observation is that with candidate statements in the ACT election last year, we had a plethora of people who were trying to provide assistance to voters and connecting voters to candidates. So Vote Easy ran their line. The Elections ACT was required by legislation to provide a platform for candidate statements, and that is likely to continue into the future. The Canberra Alliance ran its own candidate statement exercise that it had run in the previous two federal and the previous ACT elections, where we're getting candidates to make a statement really based around issues of integrity, expertise for doing the job, and questioning it as to how they were going to promote participation by the community after they had been elected. And that was somewhat eclipsed this time by all these other vote statements. And then, of course, the ANU runs their Smart Vote exercise. And so the observation that CAPAD has made out of this is that actually there are too many players, and we need to rationalise this in some way so that all the potential players get their needs met around being able to both get voters to think about the issues that we think voters need to think about when they're voting, as well as giving candidates a platform and trying to make that all one-stop shop. So, I mean, that's an ongoing discussion, which I suspect we're not going to be able to resolve here. So what we might do now is just really sort of whiz around the whole group and very briefly, just, you know, a very short reflection on what came out of the last two sessions, and particularly this session for you. So according to my screen, we'll just go around and say Thor.
Rob, I had a quick question for you.
How quick?
Very quick. I was looking at your website last night. Well, actually, one of our Dixon Reps people brought it to my attention that you got the Voices of Dixon up there. And then I looked, so I sent the organisation a contact form. Are you the person who gets that?
Yeah, I've received it and I've read it and I haven't responded yet. So can we deal with this offline?
So the question, like actually putting stuff up there, is that something you want to deal with offline as well?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
All I will say is that there are contact forms on the Active Democracy Australia website, and they will respond in due course, because we're fascinated in getting your input.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that that there was the connection between you two guys when I sent it off last night, and then I saw the website and I saw the connection with CAPAD. I thought I'd just ask. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, so you'll get a response soon, very soon.
We're all about awakening democracy. Craig.
Yep, Peter, as far as your questionnaire goes, that's the great thing. If candidates use CAPAD, they can link it to their campaign on the website, so that's pretty easy. And the wonderful thing about everything that everybody's doing, Vote Easy can play a part in what you're doing, and just by supporting it and getting it out there, we can make a big difference. But if everyone, I've just put my email address on the chat, so if everyone just any questions, any queries, send it my way, and I'll bang out questions all day, every day. Sue, and especially if you could too, I didn't get to answer your question in regards to advertising. There's an interesting part there that I can help you with there, understand. Yep.
Thank you. Anna.
Yes, very quickly, Craig, make a video and show people how to vote.
And look, we wanted to get into...
And hang on, can I just finish? And
Sorry,
explain, and no, it's all right. And explain the changes in the Senate preferences, because I think a lot of people don't know what happened in 2016. I think that'd be really useful for anybody voting for anyone.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Nadine.
Thanks a lot, Peter. One of the main insights that I have from this session is that there's a deep commitment to actually undo this disconnection and get people to be more empowered in the decisions that they affect them, but also the different ways. I mean, I like your point about rationalizing, but I also like the diversity that we have, and maybe there is a way in which we can balance being strategic, but also preserving this diversity, and that's probably going to be more we're doing in the future.
Thank you. Bob. You're muted. It's interesting, I can mute you, but I can't unmute you.
Sorry. Yeah, I've been really struck by the extraordinary diversity and vigor of what's going on, but concerned that it may be too fragmented. We may need to find a way of bringing all of this activity into a more coherent whole if we're going to do more than touch the edges of what needs to happen to democracy.
Thank you. Glenn.
Yeah, thanks. I think something that Millie said in the previous session really stuck with me, and that is that the people want to contribute, they want to matter, and I think I'm paraphrasing, but they want to be heard. And I think that how that manifests itself in the different things that are happening here is really interesting. Obviously, for those in the ACT, I'll put a big plug in for voting independent in the Senate, but I think Anna's point about a real confusion about how Senate voting works has become really apparent in all the conversations we've had. So, you know, I'm not sure where that sits, but there is a large voter education piece to be done just about the mechanics of how you actually vote in the upper house.
Yes, thank you very much. Rob.
Okay, no, it was a good discussion. I thought my answer to Thor was my contribution. So no, it was a good discussion overall, and I'm really interested in following up on some of these connections in the future.
Wonderful. Wonderful, thank you. Barbara.
Now, like Rob, I'm concerned about fragmentation, I guess. when women's electoral lobbies in 1972, when we developed our questionnaire and went and interviewed all the politicians, it was quite revolutionary, and there was a huge amount of interest from the press. All the journalists wanted to know what all the politicians said, and it was easy to get stuff into the press, so for the general public to know what was going on, or what some of those really dreadful politicians thought back then. So it just seems to me that there's an awful lot, like, it's what's happening now is people do want to have their voices heard. They do want to know what's going on. So there's a lot of different groups doing very similar things. So, with variations, and same with the climate change stuff. There's so many groups out there doing so many different things, but we're all sort of converging on the same objective. So I'm not sure, what should be happening about that. I don't know if people have got views on that or not. I don't want to do anything to destroy diversity, but we need the diversity to at least coalesce in some way, that it becomes a something that is really seen as a big movement, not just a lot of different people, different groups doing different things.
Indeed. Thank you, Barbara. Gilles.
Well, I actually think it's very important and refreshing to see that there are people taking different approaches, doing all this work. I think it's important everybody continues on their path, doing the things they're really interested in. It's an evolving situation, and for people to keep in touch and, when possible, perhaps work together on things, learn from each other's experience, and keep in touch, basically, for me is important. For me, there's no problem with this diversity. I actually think it's wonderful that there are people taking very different approaches to what appear to be similar problems.
Excellent. Thank you. Petra.
Okay. Well, I'm very inspired by what Anna you are doing in Tasmania, particularly the fact that you have embedded in your constitution that if you are successful, that this person will be running citizens' assemblies in order to keep that whole connection alive. That's pretty inspiring. Nadine, I've really appreciated hearing what a bit more about the deliberative town hall processes. I'd really like to actually know some more about that. Interesting and very positive. I think that you guys were willing in designing the second process, the following process, that you adapted the process to include an aspect of citizens' assemblies, which is bringing in the experts, which isn't normally part of the town hall setup. So it was great to see that adaptation being made, and listening in to what the participants were asking for. So that was great. I'm really appreciating everything that everybody's doing, Glenn and Craig and all of you guys, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Petra. Peter. You're muted. You're still muted.
I'm here.
It's a trap. Okay. Like the others, I really admire the great diversity there is in attempts to improve democracy. And I imagine that the more successful these attempts are, the more that political parties will have to pay attention and perhaps respond better. And thirdly, I just draw our attention to the presentation by Emily Jenke this afternoon, where she talks about engaging citizen assemblies in providing advice to politicians on actually what's important in their electorate, what people are thinking.
Great, thank you. And Sue.
Thanks, Peter. I guess a couple of things come through for me. something that kind of resonated viscerally was what Melly said about the prevailing negativity and the importance of actually having a more positive message for people. And that positive message, I think, is around participation and the capacity to achieve change. There's a bit of two messages coming through this last session. One is, very much about getting a better local member in, and that most likely an independent with a different agenda who is not tied to a party platform. But I think the other message coming through is the importance of working with what's there. I think we are a long way from losing the dominance of a party system of governance. But so take what we've got and try and make it work better for us. And I suppose that's why I'm having a stab at Active Democracy Bean to see if there are ways that you can get a community and their local member working more closely together.
Wonderful, thank you very much. All right, so it's been a fantastic, thought-provoking, like yesterday this morning, and I think it's time we all go and stretch our legs and attempt at the sunshine. We'll be back at 1:30 where we're going to be working more around this theme of helping your MP work for you, with a particular focus on deliberative and participatory techniques, with Emily Jenke Petra and Polly Cameron from the New Democracy Foundation. So enjoy lunch and we'll see you then.